The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV, and we're coming to you tonight on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and on Channel 34 on Simul TV, which is the X Zone TV channel at www.simultv.com. Before we get to our next guest, X Zone Nation, if you would like exclusive access to 50 exclusive TV channels, including the X Zone TV channel, 95 plus video games online in 5 languages, and thousands of movies on demand, 100% absolutely free. All you need to do is go to www.504free. That's the number 50, then the word for free.ca. This is a way that we're trying to say thank you from everyone here at the X Zone Broadcast Network, Relmar McConnell Media Company, and our good friends at Simul TV. So once again, that website is 54free.ca. My guest this hour is Peter Kling. We've had the pleasure of having Peter on the show before. He is the author of Letters to Earth, You Can Survive Armageddon. And joining me now is Peter Kling. And Peter, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thank you very much. How are you? How have you been?
I've been doing great. Thank you, Peter. What's new with you?
Oh, there's a lot new. This is actually kind of like my first coming out radio show here since we've made a major move to live off the grid.
Oh, wow.
You start to get to the point where you have to practice what you preach. Mm-hmm. And so if you're talking about situations that are going on in the quote end times, and you're living in a penthouse apartment in the city, it's incongruent. So we made a move. As a matter of fact, I've got a better half now.
Oh, and congratulations.
Well, thank you. We complement each other. And I was listening to your previous show, and boy, you want to start manifesting things in your life in a positive way. She can help you out, and that's Maggie Hart. A lot of people know her across the stream, but the airwaves, I should say. But we'd kind of joined forces, and in all truth, she basically manifested this place. We were staying at a friend's house, his camp actually, on a pond. She said, "Why can't we find a place like this?" And so, you can manifest the things as long as you're working in congruent with a higher power, a positive higher power. And a lot of people don't have. They're searching for answers. They don't have the answers for the questions that they're looking for. And she helps a lot of people out with great situations. She's basically a spiritual advisor, but she'll do her own show. But between the two of us, we've gone off grid. And I'll tell you something. This is not anything that you can decide, well, we're going to live off grid today. It's a learning curve and a learning process. And you start to live more harmonious with nature. You start living more organically. And you look at the world from a slightly different viewpoint. And the great thing, you don't get hit with all the EMF radio waves that the people who live in cities do. And there's a certain freedom about that.
So when you say off the grid, do you use solar power? Do you...
We use a little bit of everything, from generator to solar. We're going to move into wind before too long. I've got a neighbor friend who's going to drill me a hole in the ground. So we'll eventually get to solar. I mean, to wind power. But it's more adjusting to, okay, you're off the grid. And it's just a totally different way of life. You don't go flipping on wall switches. You have to plan things, and you plan more accordingly to the way that farmers planned 100 years ago. You hear all the preppers, have at least a month's worth of food, or farmers plan for a year to a year and a half in advance. So they always had plenty of food for them, their families, extended families, and the animals, the critters they were raising. So you start thinking more long term as opposed to I want it now, and we've all been put into an I want it now society, and it's come back to bite us in the butt, because with everything that we're seeing going on in the world, especially what the world just came out of officially, the pandemic was over now. And so, well, wait a minute. Now we got open borders here in the United States, right? Anybody can come in. But those past few years that we all just went through, I don't care what country you were in, you want to talk about biblical times. When have we ever seen the healthy get locked down, right?
True.
And then and talk about wars and rumors of wars, and now we're engaging with a possible escalation to a nuclear war with Russia. Seriously? And then you want to talk about the drug problem and social problems that we're facing. In the state in which I live, greater than 1 in 10 people have an issue with substance abuse. Wait a minute. You mean 10% or more than 10% of the population have issues? We're hitting times where it's like, okay, are we facing the end of the world, or what are we facing the end of? And the one thing is for sure, there's been this spiritual awakening, and if you followed the Q movement, whatever you want to believe about that, and the things that all gave birth to, I've referred to it as essentially a caravan of tent revivals, which has gone across the country to get the populace stimulated and become more patriots, or more patriotic, and take more of an interest in their communities. And I've heard over and over and over again that we are in a war of good and evil. We are in a war against the satanic element. I've heard the Khazarian mafia used over and over again. Those who claim to be Jews and are not, but are lying. Wait a minute. Let's talk about biblical. Twice in Revelation, once in Revelation chapter 2 and Revelation chapter 3, verse 9, and I'm going to paraphrase here, it says that I will make those from the synagogue of Satan who claim to be Jews yet are not, but are lying. I will make them come before you to do obeisance at your feet. Huh. Who are these people? Are they the Khazarian mafia, the banksters that we have that are controlling the world? The Rothschilds, the Oppenheimers, those behind the Nazi, National Worker, in German, it would be National Arbeit, National Workers Zionist Association, who is behind a lot of what is going on that we see within Europe and Ukraine, and maybe around the world. Keep in mind that it was Prescott Bush Sr. who helped fund the Nazis during World War II. Think about that. How did he turn around, get arrested, and charged with aiding and abetting the enemy, and then wind up becoming a senator, and have one son run the CIA and become a president, and his grandson become the president? That's 3 power generations based on Nazi support. What does that tell you about our government?
Well, that's politics. That's the way the world runs. But, Peter, what we're seeing today is not unique throughout history. We've seen this happen before, and we've seen false prophets say that we're at the end times, Armageddon is near, and times and dates have come, and they've come and gone. So how is this any different from any other time in history?
Well, we've had things that have happened that have never happened in history. And a big one, which we've talked about previously with CERN and the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
CERN was a pivotal point. And this is interesting because the lead up to this, remember we got the movie 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world. And we got the end of the long Mayan Bach tune. And 2012 came and went, and oh, hey, the Mayans were wrong. Well, not exactly. They forgot to carry the 1 year or something like that. The Long Baktun actually ended December 16th, 2013. Now, the interesting thing is that while all this is going on, we have some interesting biblical prophecy going on, because we go to Revelation chapter 9, and it says that a star that falls from heaven is given the key to the pit of the abyss, and he unleashes a plague upon the earth. It's like a smoke coming out of a furnace, and it's like a locust plague of these interesting beings that they're the size of horses, dressed for war, with scorpions' tails. And it's interesting, they're told not to harm any vegetation, but go stinging the men. The men who do not have the mark of God in their forehead. Now, wait a minute. Who are these men that do not have the mark of God? Now you have to start putting these prophecies together. Now, the interesting thing is, it says that this army has a king over it. The king's name is in Hebrew Abaddon, or in Greek Apollyon. Now, it's interesting. CERN is built on an old Roman temple, or say where CERN is built, it existed an ancient Roman temple dedicated to Apollyon. And who's the mascot of CERN? Shiva, the goddess of destruction. And so in 2012, and then again in 2013, they were looking for the God particle, which is most likely antimatter, which they allegedly found in 2012, and they repeated the operation in 2013, and we get the Mandela effect. Now, we're also supposed to see the greatest comet a civilization ever saw, and here's where the Mayans come back into play. It was Comet Ison. Remember Comet Ison?
Mm-hmm.
I watched this in real time. I watched the comet go around the backside of the sun. And comets, their tails always face away from the sun as they're going back around. Those tails are staying away, facing away from the sun, like the hands on a clock. But only when Comet Ison came around the sun, the coma was facing parallel to the solar winds. How does that happen? How does that happen? How does a force blow a comet's coma perpendicular to the solar winds? You still find the YouTube on this. Go look it up. You'll see what I'm talking about. And the NASA specialists who were talking about this saying, oh, something's wrong here. Something's wrong. Now, on the 16th was the end of the Long Baktun. And if had Comet Ison survived, it would have looked, Venus was in the night sky, or in the evening sky. Had Comet Ison survived, it would have looked like a giant exclamation point. Oops, wrong way from the camera. A giant exclamation point in the sky that we would have seen, everybody would have seen around the world. The sign of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered snake god. Who destroyed the Mayan feathered snake god? Was something released from CERN? We go back to Apollyon. He's released from the pit of the abyss. What did CERN open? There's been a lot of discussion on this. It wasn't just the God particle, but here's the interesting thing. We got the Mandela effect, and Mandela was reported to have died June 26th, 2013. But they took him off life support, and all of a sudden he got better and went home. What? No, they kept him because of what had happened with what they did with CERN. Comet Ison, we were supposed to see the end of November. And all of a sudden, Nelson Mandela died for the final time on December 5th, 2013. And we had the 10 days of Mandela. This is where Obama goes down there. Now, you got to look at the guest list. Nelson Mandela was also a Knight of Malta, or at least this actor playing Mandela. But you got to look at the guest list who went there. Very impressive guest list. And this is when Obama is giving his speech, and he's got this deaf guy standing next to him, signing in a sign language that not one sign language interpreter on the planet could understand. And he's claiming that he saw, in an interview later, he claimed that he saw angels flying through the stadium. Now, this guy was also part of a murder plot. Actually, his partner was convicted of first-degree murder. He was found to be too insane to stand trial. how did this guy wind up standing next to Obama during the 10 days of Nelson Mandela?
All right, we've got to take a break. Please stand by. Exonation, Peter Kling is our guest. PeterKling.com is the website. We'll both be back after this break. Don't go away.
NASA has confirmed that they have evidence of life beyond Earth.
This discovery is confirmed.
Well, let's see, we've had visitors again. Yeah. Anything worth mentioning?
I filmed 16 minutes on March 5th, 1994, 16 minutes of broad daylight UFO activity.
The other side, the spirit realm, is a parallel dimension which runs, which coexists with ours. And what spirits are doing is they're sending waves of frequency from that dimension to ours.
The government instituted the truth embargo. The government poured disinformation and misinformation into this field, encouraging hoaxes and any other foolishness. It created a truth vacuum that naturally was going to be filled with theories and assertions and other stuff.
The oil oligarchs and the banks and the people who are making decisions that are leading us down the wrong path.
They've undermined the research, intimidated and threatened witnesses. The government is responsible for the fact that the status of this issue is not resolved.
I'm Rob McConnell, host and executive producer of the X Zone radio show. Now we are set to bring the amazing world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology to broadcast TV and online video with the development of X Zone TV. X Zone TV will now bring our loyal listeners and new viewers face to face with the most controversial and well-known personalities in the field of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. From scientists to theorists, astronauts to adventurers, celebrities, pundits, advocates, and naysayers, they'll all join our rapid-fire TV broadcast, interactive discussion, and debate. Interest in the paranormal and parapsychology has never been more intense, and it continues to grow. The truth is out there, so take a deep breath and join us as we step into the light. For more information about X Zone TV, please contact me, Rob McConnell, directly at these coordinates, Rob McConnell at xzonetv.com.
Welcome back. Peter Kling is my guest. His website is peterkling.com, and he is the author of, do you have your pencils and paper ready? All right. The name of the book, Peter, is
Letters to Earth, You Can Survive Armageddon. And if you'd like to get a copy of it, just email me. I'll send you a free PDF copy. The email address is one, O-N-E, spell it out, 1@peterkling.com.
Peter, we kind of got right into the crux of the conversation. Let our listeners know who you are and a little bit about yourself so they'll better understand your passion and what we're talking about.
Sure. Well, I'm known as the Einstein of biblical prophecy. Oddly enough, I found out about 3-4 years ago that my ancestors actually helped start the Reformation against the church. Interesting. And I've kind of picked up that same
passion.
That same passion, yeah. I was educated in the scriptures before the age of 5. I had a total concept of what the Bible was basically about by the time I was 5, and dedicated myself to that end. However, when I was 9 years old, I had an interesting dream, which I got to see the future. Not only did I get to see the future in this dream, but then I lived through it, and I had to know how that was possible. I knew about the story of Samuel. He was communicating with God, but what was going on here? And the spiritual door was kind of shut off in my face. And as a 9-year-old, I decided to go down the path of chemistry and try to figure out life from a chemical side. And it was in 1980, I put them both together, and I found, wow, now you put science and and what's written in the scriptures together, it now tells a story. If you had to rename the Bible today, you could call it 6,000 years of alien intervention in human affairs, because that's where it starts off. And that's where we are now. It's the opening of the pit of the abyss.
So let me ask you a very simple question. Who is God?
Sure. Who is God? I gave a great explanation for God. And Rob, this took me years to figure out. I used to contemplate this back when I was 8 years old. I remember staring out my window, looking up at the sun, when you could stare at the sun, and think, God created the sun. Well, okay, and this ties into CERN, looking for the God particle. We have to go use two different laws. The first is a simple law of physics that you can neither create nor destroy energy. You can only transform it, right?
Right.
And if you look at what it says in Revelation, it says that I am the Alpha and the Omega. Before me there existed nothing, and after me there will exist nothing. So wait a minute. Where does the energy go to? Antimatter, or what we call antimatter? And so if you have to say there was no energy as we comprehend it today, and then there could have only have been in existence one dimension of pure dynamic energy, most likely antimatter. We have to make one minor assumption here. We have to assume that this energy, this pure dynamic energy, was conscious, because we're conscious, right? That's the only assumption we have to make. And so if you have pure dynamic energy, that this energy comes up, because it's actually recorded within the scriptures as well, it comes up with this great concept, a concept of love. The more you give, the better you feel. The more you get, the better you feel. And it works on so many different levels. You can love your kids, you can love your wife, in certain ways that nobody else can. You can love your car, you can love your family, you can love the world in which you live. You can love esoterically or in real time and in real passion. And it says in 1 John, God is love. So if you want to experience more love, what do? Shut yourself off? Or do you open yourself up and start creating things? You see, and now you start creating interesting life forms that you can have interaction with. And so the great thing about humans, most people don't understand this, women have the female biology to produce about 400,000 eggs. And men always create sperm. So if we had perfect human DNA, we're planet creators. We're planet populators. Earth was the start. That's why Earth is so valuable. Earth was the start for perfect human DNA. And what happened? We got hijacked by alien intervention. And our perfect human A was destroyed. And we no longer have perfect human A. We have DNA that has telomeres on the end. And as those telomeres pop off every time DNA reproduces, we run out of telomeres and we die.
But Peter, how do we know there was actually alien intervention? How do we know?
Well, very simple. You go back to Genesis and you have the serpent, which is interesting. The serpent, what would be another name for serpent? The reptilian?
Yeah, that's a stretch. That's a
no,
real
not
stretch.
really. Think about it, because there's dragons involved. And when you go to the Middle East today, you have, the Far East today, you have dragon families. They worship dragons. And so that's what we also have in Revelation. You see the serpent in Genesis, that when the serpent was condemned, it had to crawl on its belly in the dust. For a snake, big deal. It does that for a living every day. However, for a dragon to have to crawl on its belly in the dust would be a great insult. Dragon worship or serpent worship, snake worship, and sun worship are the two oldest religions on the face of the planet. It's not part of our culture here, but you go to the Far East, you got the dragon families, and they are very influential on what's going on the planet.
But
So
once again, there's no proof that dragons ever existed.
let's say there's no proof that is given to us, just like the Smithsonian has allegedly covered up proof of giants.
Well, that's allegedly. Once again, there's no proof of any of these accusations. They're great conspiracy theories.
There isn't. But now when you start matching up the things that are happening on the planet, wait a minute. We just went through a worldwide pandemic. You say, okay, well, so it happened in 1919 with the Spanish flu. But they didn't lock up the innocent people back then. Then we went through it. We're going through an economic free fall. And we're facing World War IV on a nuclear level. These are all major situations that this planet has not faced before.
Also, Peter, the planet hasn't been as populated as it is presently. Plus, the flow of information and disinformation hasn't been as prolific because the planet did not have the internet before.
I agree with you, especially about disinformation.
Exactly.
There is so much disinformation out there that you listen to this whole MAGA movement, and you've got so many different people that are involved, and they're all, most of them, not all of them, most of them have something to sell, whether it's, buying gold and silver or buying Trump bucks, whatever you want to believe in. Yeah. There's so many scams out there, and people it's a tent revival. It's a religious tent revival. Yeah. Tell me the difference, right? Now, look what's come out of the Vatican. Nothing. Interesting thing. For the first time ever, the Pope actually came out and he erased I forget the exact name, Command of Discovery, I believe it is, where it was written in the 1400s, where as explorers went out, the last time it was updated, one of the times it was updated was 1491. Okay. What happened to 1492? It was that the explorers could go out, and wherever they did not find Christians or people who would take up the Christian faith, they had the legal right to take their land and kill the people and take all their belongings, according to the church. That's how the Vatican comes to own 60 some odd % of the planet Earth. So, and the Pope just canceled this. Now, what was great, remember when he visited Canada a couple of months ago?
No, I paid no attention to it.
But he was there, right? One of the things that he said, he apologized for the church's involvement in the genocide of the First Nations peoples. Wait, what?
I do remember that. I do remember that. Yeah.
Well, what kind of lawsuit does that open the church for?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, all religious organizations should be disbanded because they do more harm than good.
Okay. What a great segue. Because here's the situation. When they opened up CERN, Veterans Today, I thought it a little bit odd when I heard about it, but they wrote an article that the Nelson Mandela ritual funeral, was a cover for writing for different countries signing a treaty with an off-planet entity. Interesting. Biblically speaking, could this have been Apollyon that was released by CERN? Now, we can do a whole show on the Mandela effect, but let's just focus on
no thanks. No thanks. I'm not interested in the Mandela effect. I think it's a bunch of bunk.
Well, some things are kind of interesting about that. Yeah. But anyway, let's take a look at what happens. Okay. At the same time, we get contacted, and the UFO community went nuts with all of a sudden the Galactic Federation shows up. All right, so that's the story you guys came up with? Okay, whatever. But look at the guest list at the Mandela funeral. Why were these people there? Some were royals from the Far East, interestingly enough.
Respect for a leader.
Okay. So let's say they weren't there to sign any treaty with any off-planet entity. But here's an interesting thing. If you go to Revelation 17, it talks about this 8th king, which comes out of the pit of the abyss, Apollyon. Right where the temple of Apollyon is, we got CERN, and then Shiva, the goddess of destruction. What did they think that they were releasing on planet Earth that was going to cause so much destruction? You know, why did they choose these, especially Apollyon, built right there? CERN is built around the old Roman temple of Apollyon. So what were they expecting when they pulled the switch to bring this about? I don't know. But here's the interesting thing. The king of the pit of the abyss, who this the whore of Babylon is riding. Now he's represented as this scarlet-colored wild beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. This 8th king comes out of the abyss. All the nations of the world are impressed with this beast, and 10 kings, it says, who do not have a kingdom yet, join the beast and rule for 1 hour. And their main goal is to destroy the harlot, to strip her naked, to eat her fleshy parts and burn the rest with fire. Why? Because God put it into their hearts to carry out this one command. Let's follow what happens to the Vatican in the coming months as we get more.
Wait a second. Hold on here. Why would God do that when one of his commandments is thou shalt not kill?
We're dealing with off-planet entities.
Or are we just talking about a storybook that has a lot of coincidences?
Well, you know, you ask a good question. It's interesting how all these coincidences start to line up for our day.
Stand by. We've got to take our break. Exonation, Peter Kling is our guest. PeterKling.com is the website. We'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Peter Kling is my guest. PeterKling.com is his website. And Peter, why in like, let me just go back a little bit. The Bible is a great book. Is it possible that the Bible was just written as a way for humans to try and understand what they didn't know throughout the development? And if God did in fact create humans, why did he create Cro-Magnons? Why did he not just go right to the way we look now? Why did we have to evolve if a God did create this?
Okay, well, you ask a lot of good questions, and here's another show. Let's start at Precambrian period, and we're going to remove God from the equation just a little bit, because sometimes commands are given. You know, you have to say, well, if God did all the work, what did the angels do? Stand around with their wings in their pockets? When you look at Precambrian, about 3 billion years ago, according to what academia likes to tell us that the age of the Earth is, nothing happens. We go from cyanobacteria to simple, like, jellyfish life forms, you know, a little bit more than an amoeba. But all of a sudden, boom, the Cambrian period happens, and we have such a download of DNA on this Earth that scientists cannot explain. They say, oh, well, the oxygen levels got up to about 24% and life just spontaneously combusted. Wait a minute. Where did all the DNA come from? Because you had more DNA available on this planet back during the Cambrian period than what is on the planet today. My favorite little Cambrianite, if you want to call it that, trilobites. Trilobites, sorry. Trilobite, the only one that we have left today is what people call the pill bug or the potato bug. You know, you lift up a piece of rotting wood and you'll find one and they curl up. There used to be over 17,000 different kinds of those roaming the bottoms of the ocean, and the largest ones were over 3 feet long. Think about that. That's the last one we have. Talk about extinction. So you've got these different things that happen, but once you start putting genetic engineering into place, it makes a lot more sense than, oh, it just happened and it took billions of years for us to evolve to this point. Genetic engineering speeds up the factor. And then now, who are the genetic engineers? You go right to Genesis, the 2nd chapter, and you read Genesis 2, where God says, it's not good that Adam is alone. I'm going to make a helper for him. What does it record? He causes a sleep to fall over the man. He opens the flesh. He removes part of a rib, and he closes the flesh, and he proceeds to build a woman from the rib. And he brings the woman to the man, and the man says, at last, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This is my sister. She's my clone. It's genetic engineering 101 right there in Genesis 2.
It can be interpreted as genetic engineering. It's just an interpretation.
Okay, if you took the DNA out of one human, do we not have the ability to put that DNA into another human and clone the first human? Absolutely. Do we not have? They've set up bioweapons labs around the whole planet that are enhancing the performance of different bacterium so they can infect us with it. What do you think we just went through with the lockdown? And everybody lined up for their boosters.
So you're saying that COVID was a biological agent that was deliberately released on the population?
You look at the statistics.
No. Yes or no? That's a very simple question. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Look at the evidence, and
no. Stop skating, Peter. Stop skating.
Yes, I would
yes
say
or no.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say yes, indeed. When you look at all of the evidence, and I followed this since when we went back to when it was first reported. It was reported as not being a typical flu virus.
Right.
It was something more. It had additional proteins on it.
It evolved.
It was able to mutate the proteins because every time they checked, more proteins were growing out of it. Come on, what is this? Gain of function technology? Yeah, exactly. Gain of function technology. And when this starts coming out, along with the massive drug addiction that is going on, the two biggest money makers on the planet, number one, drug trafficking. Number two, human trafficking, including the trafficking of children. Look at what the First Nations genocide was all about. Kevin Annett, have you ever had Kevin Annett on your show? You must have had.
No.
He's a longtime investigator into what has happened to the First Nations peoples. And the Pope apologized for genocide?
I think
you're right.
I think before the Pope apologizes for anything else, he should apologize for the way that the Catholic Church has abused children throughout history.
I agree 100%. And that takes you to the ninth circle where they were sacrificing children. It's interesting. You go to chapter 18 of Revelation where the merchants are out of business and they're lamenting all the things that they can't sell the church. And it comes down to, read the list in Revelation 18. It says slaves and human souls. Wait a minute. What's the difference between somebody who's put into slavery and somebody's soul? Think about that. And so now, interestingly enough, you have this beast that's released from the abyss. We're dealing with aliens. And if you listen to some people, they say, well, The Galactic Federation is here to help liberate planet Earth from the reptilians and the Greys, because they're the ones that are involved in Satanism.
Peter, I've been doing the show for 35 years now, and I've seen no evidence of these way out wacky claims about extraterrestrials, reptilians, and the list goes on and on.
Yes, and a lot of empty claims. We don't see the evidence. Stand fast, because what we'll see is the result. When the church comes down, and Rob, you've said it, the church has to pay for its sins.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what it says within the scriptures. The church has to pay for its sins. And that's what we are seeing taking place.
You know, something that's bothered me for many years, and I've had many biblical scholars on the show over the years, is that I look at the Bible as one of the greatest storybooks ever written. There are two separate gods. You've got the God of the Old Testament, you've got the God of the New Testament. The God of the New Testament is kind, loving, caring. And then you've got the God of the Old Testament, who's a real son of a bitch. He's a real son of a bitch. You know, he says what he does is he is the worst example of a father that has ever been created in history, because he kills his own children all the time.
Oh, you're saying he kills his own children?
Sure.
Well, hold on, because you have to go back further. You see, boy, here's another show in itself. When humankind,
Peter, hold on. My producer's just given me the cue. I have to take my final break. Peter Kling and I will return on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Craig, if the Vatican calls, I'm not here tonight. Our Nation, our guest this hour is Peter Kling, www.peterkling.com. He's the author of Letters to Earth, You Can Survive Armageddon. As always, Peter, great talking to you. My look at God is that he should never, he doesn't practice what he preaches. You know, you've got the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. You've got the Israelites being given favor, and then the Egyptians come after them crossing the sea, and he folds them in. All these people are dead. It's the old adage of good versus evil, bad versus good.
Let me give you a little insight here. What you have is that Yahweh chooses a nation out of Abraham. Okay, now what's going on the planet? The rest of the people on the planet are worshiping multiple. They're polytheistic. They worship gods for everything. You go to the Hindus, they've got 330 million different gods. Who named them? I don't quite get that, but that's an interesting number, which also correlates with Revelation. But so he raises this nation up, and when the nation gets involved in worshiping these other gods, as Solomon did, and Solomon set a lot of precedents for Baal worship and Molech worship. Well, we still have those same gods today. Why? Because Israel didn't listen to Yahweh when he said, go into the promised land and wipe them all out, because they're all involved in child sacrifice.
And yet the same Yahweh said in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. So how can he have both sides of the coin?
Well, you see, you set up the rules. He makes the rules. But you see, the thing is, we're dealing with a planet where, and I'm going to just jump into Jesus, the God, or Yeshua, God's son, which is Yeshua actually means salvation through Yahweh. But Yeshua said, the greatest commandment is to love God, your Father, with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as you do yourself. He set up this as a guide, because the Mosaic law, nobody could keep. Nobody could keep the Mosaic law. It was to show people how imperfect they were. But you know, Rob, something as simple as love changes everything, doesn't it? You see, we're right back to the origination. So it's our connection to source where we're actually going to connect to. Are we going to connect to that love side? Or are we going to connect to, as Jesus would in his 3 temptations, by the devil or by the satanic force controlling who owned this world, who owned the kingdoms, to give them to Jesus? And it's interesting, Apollyon is now going after the satanic kingdoms. We're in a dynamic shift, a dynamic shift across the whole cosmos. But it's when we stay in that state of love that we can connect with Source, so with Father Yahweh. But it's that power of the universe which empowers us, and we can connect with other people at the most basic level and comprehension. If you do something caring for somebody from a state of love, you're bound to get a lot further than if you meet them in a head-on conflict. And you see, that's one of the great reasons that Maggie and I got together, is because Maggie Hart, she's always in a state of love, and that's how she's able to help people through the situation.
Peter, I hate to do this, but our producer tells me we've just run out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And X Zone Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, Peter Kling, visit his website, peterkling.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and Channel 34 on Simul TV, which Simul TV and our channel is 7/24/365. We have past shows, we have movies, we have documentaries. We try to answer as many questions as we can. So I'll be back. Whatever you do, don't go away.